Welcome to day 42 of the Atlantic hurricane season, day number 60 in the Eastern Pacific, though there isn't any activity going on over there at the moment. The Atlantic, we still have the remnants of Chantal, which has also been designated as Invest 96 now, with a 30% chance of development at the moment as it moves through Cuba or near the Cuban coast towards the northwest at the moment. But all our attention is pretty much on Typhoon Soulik at the moment, which is a Category 2 storm, a high-end Cat 2 storm, 110 miles per hour, and is likely to make landfall in Taiwan and then in China as a typhoon, possibly a major storm as well if Soulik does indeed develop, intensify a little bit more before making landfall in Taiwan. It's obviously quite a situation going on there at the moment. Lots of warnings in effect. We'll get onto that very shortly. And looking at the Atlantic, what we can see of it, unfortunately Chantal, what's left of it, is unable to see it on here, but it is fairly disorganised at this point. We'll have the floater imagery up on Chantal very soon, but that's the remnants of Chantal moving through Cuba and the Bahamas at the moment. And the Indian Ocean still fairly quiet at the moment. We also had Invest 98 not too long ago. That's obviously no sign of that anymore, but in the northern Indian Ocean things looking quiet here as well. No signs of disturbances or any future storms. Looking at the sea surface temperatures then, the Eastern Pacific remains fairly warm, especially near the Mexican coast, especially at the border at Guatemala and El Salvador as well. Temperatures around 30 degrees here. The Gulf of Mexico remains warm, warmer towards the western side, 29 to 30 degrees in the northwest of the Gulf of Mexico. And in the Western Pacific, warm temperatures ahead of Soulik still, 30 degrees or more on its approach to Taiwan at the moment, and around the Philippine Islands as well, 30 degree waters remaining here. So this is the current situation. The Philippine name is Huaning, by the way, currently with winds of 110 miles per hour, pressures 952 millibars, position 23 degrees north, 126.7 degrees east, and is likely to move towards west-northwest. Possibly re-intensifying to a Category 3 storm, but probably not at this stage because time is getting gone. It will be encountering land very soon, possibly making landfall in Taiwan as a Category 2 storm and then in China as a Category 1 storm in the next 2 days. Typhoon warnings in effect for Taiwan and the Miyako and Yaeyama islands in Japan at the moment. Typhoon warning in effect for these locations. We also have an Orange Typhoon Alert in effect for the coast of southeastern China. That's the second highest warning alert for Chinese areas, so that's along the coastline there. And heavy rain warnings in effect for most of Taiwan as well. Gale advisories for Okinawa and the Aito Islands in Japan, and Signal 1 warnings for the Batanes Islands in the Philippines. That's for winds of 20 to 40 miles per hour. Here's the remnants of Chantal then, currently winds of 30 miles per hour, pressure 1013 millibars, positions 22.4 degrees north, 78 degrees west, with a 30% chance of redevelopment, or recyclone genesis I suppose you could say, and is likely to move towards the north-northwest and then towards the north, and possibly making landfall maybe as a tropical storm. Some of the models are hinting at that in South Carolina or maybe North Carolina. And this is the floater imagery and latest on remnants of Chantal here. Obviously very disorganised, as you can see here. Not too much in the way of organisation or any real intense bursts of convection, or especially towards the south there. We do have a bit of cloud cover near Cuba, but it's very disorganised, a bit of a mess at the moment I suppose, and that's why it's got two labels as Ex-Chantal and Invest 96. So here's the latest imagery the past 24 hours or so on Typhoon Soulik in the Western Pacific. Here you can see it moving towards the west-northwest, approaching the southern Ryukyu Islands in Japan. You can see the outer bands of the storm reaching those islands now, and Okinawa as well, having those outer bands there, and the Philippines, northern Philippines, having a little bit of it too. And the storm's moving towards the west-northwest. The eyes become more unclear in the past day or so. It is still there, you can just about see it in those last few frames, but maybe it's signs of the storm continuing to weaken in the future, or maybe the eye will just pop out again and it'll have a last burst of intensity. That will remain to be seen. We'll see what happens, but either way it will be quite an impact for the Taiwanese coast in the next day or two. Here's the model ones then. The CMC model has Chantal moving into the Carolinas and then another storm forming after that in the Gulf of Mexico, and we also have 4 low pressure systems in the Eastern Pacific, one of which or maybe more may form, which is rather interesting scenario. Not picked up by any of the other models. The ECMWF has quite a calm and quiet situation going on, with high pressure building in to the United States in particular, and into the Caribbean as well in some areas. Quite a large high pressure system at one point in that loop there. The GFS model doesn't really predict much going on except for a tropical wave moving through the Atlantic, not really intensifying, and then another one towards the south as well, possibly becoming a tropical depression, maybe briefly. We'll see how that one goes. Now the NavGen model doesn't predict much on the cards at all. Perhaps a little bit of a low pressure system in the eastern Pacific, but really nothing in terms of tropical storms or anything of that nature. The GFDL model has Chantal not doing much from this point onwards. You can see it moving towards the north, generally into the mid-Atlantic coast as a weak storm, and the HWRF has a little bit of a stronger storm, maybe just about reaching tropical storm status as it makes landfall in South Carolina, but certainly nothing of any real potency or any danger. And looking at the computer models in static mode, here's Chantal. You can see how there's one outlier moving along the eastern coast of Florida, the western coast of Florida, but most of them moving along the east or out at sea, moving through the Bahamas and then making landfall in South Carolina. That's what, or North Carolina, most of them are saying at the moment. In the western Pacific, the CMC model has obviously Soulik making landfall in Taiwan and then into China, and then two other storms forming, one in the South China Sea making landfall in Hainan and then in Vietnam, and another storm at the very end there forming in between Guam and the Philippines towards the end of that loop there, which is interesting. The GFS model doesn't predict anything of the sort, just Soulik making landfall in Taiwan as a quite severe storm, and then into China after that as a typhoon most likely. Looking at the overall predicted season scores then for July the 12th, Ken remains in first place with 79 points. Typhoon Belper and William both joint second, you could say, with 71 points, though Typhoon Belper gets second place because of the date of prediction. The earlier the date of prediction, the higher the position would be on any tied points. Don't forget you can submit your own storm totals at the website force13.com/interactive. Just fill out the prediction form and it will be sent over to me, and I'll upload the latest scores in due course whenever I feel bothered, to be brutally honest. But there you have it. I have to do it manually, unfortunately, but don't forget to do it sooner rather than later, because time is running out and scores will go down, potential scores, as time goes on. So what happened on this day then on July the 12th? Well, it's all the E's on the first page here. 1975, Tropical Storm Eleanor made landfall near Manzanillo in Mexico. In 1980, Tropical Storm Estelle formed in the eastern Pacific. In 82, Tropical Storm Amelia formed in the eastern Pacific. And in 1983, Tropical Storm Eric also formed in the eastern Pacific. So all the E's in the eastern Pacific there so far. In 1990, Hurricane Fausto dissipated in the eastern Pacific. In 1995, Tropical Storm Chantal formed in the Atlantic, obviously a little bit later than our Chantal this year. In 1996, Hurricane Bertha made landfall in North Carolina as a Category 2 storm, resulting in $270 million in damages. And also that same year, Typhoon Dan dissipated, and Tropical Eve formed in the same day in the western Pacific on this day. And in 1997, Enrique formed in the eastern Pacific. In 1998, Tropical Storm Nicole dissipated over China. In 2001, Tropical Storm Trami dissipated over Taiwan. In 2004, Tropical Storm Blas and Kompasu both formed in the eastern and western Pacific basins, respectively. In 2006, Tropical Storm Carlotta formed in the eastern Pacific. And in 2012, Hurricane Daniel dissipated and Fabio formed in the eastern Pacific on this day, on July the 12th. And don't forget you can track any storm that forms, including the ones that are currently active, at the website force13.com/storm tracking. That's the main page, the storm tracking page, which shows the overview of which storms are currently active, with the tables at the top and bottom which show obviously which storms are active, their intensities, and indeed any warnings that are in effect. Obviously there's lots of warnings in the western Pacific at the moment, so make sure you stay up to date in between videos and visit the website, because that will be more up to date than the video will be in due course anyway as time goes on. So that's the current situation there. Obviously it's lots of warnings in effect, so it will be well worth checking out, especially for those who live in those areas affected. And don't forget you can follow Force 13 on the social mediums. We're on all three, YouTube, Facebook and Twitter. Force 13, just search them, you should find me fairly easily enough. And don't forget to show your support, as usual, by liking, subscribing, commenting, favouriting and following, or indeed anything else that you may think of. I much appreciate any positive feedback that comes through on the videos, and indeed on emails as well, which I do indeed get. The email address, if you do want to email, is force13@hotmail.co.uk, I believe. Hopefully I didn't get that one wrong. But the next bulletin will be coming up around midnight UTC on Saturday morning, 13th of July, and there will probably be a bulletin, an update on Typhoon Soulik in between around probably 3:30 UTC on Friday afternoon, July the 12th. But that's all for now.